Cochran, if you would state your name, give us a little background, and then if you'll work to get to what you want us to know.
John Cochran. Mr. Chairman, distinguished members of this subcommittee, thank you for your time today, and thank you also for the continuation of your subcommittee hearings that began on December 3rd, as well as the report of those initial hearings issued on December 17th. Thank you for that. My testimony today will center around my experience as an observer and monitor during 3 days when I witnessed the data collection and reporting of the presidential race vote totals that were extracted from 410,000 ballots in Gwinnett County during the statewide risk limiting audit conducted last month. I'm here today to describe what I saw as well as what I did not see, but I expected to see. Before I present specific details, I should state my credentials as they relate to my testimony today. I'm an automation engineer with extensive experience in data validation. Throughout my career focus in a variety of industries, I've spent many hours, months, and even years involved with the collection, analysis, auditing, and validation of all sorts of data in many settings, from DOE nuclear weapons facilities and regulated pharmaceutical industries. Early in my career, I designed industrial security systems and coordinated installation of threat detection and deterrent systems in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and the Savannah River site in South Carolina. These systems were deployed to protect access to and custody of plutonium and other nuclear weapons materials. Most recently, I spent 2 years on site in Social Circle, Georgia, at a $2 billion Baxter and now Takeda pharmaceutical production facility, where I authored written protocols, which are procedures and quality procedures and helped validate the proper functionality of process control systems, networks, and related production equipments per strict FDA guidelines for such validation. Typical data I've collected and or scrutinized during my career has been as simple as material inventory counts and as sophisticated as complex software code used in the production of products in regulated industries. I've authored and executed hundreds of documents related to the validation of manufacturing process systems and equipment. And as you know, there's a variety of documents and software applications that are created and executed to track the production, inventory, quality, storage, and handling records for many valuable substances and items in American factories and businesses. One such valuable item is a voter's ballot. Such documents and protocols would be expected to be found in the recent election and hopefully in the upcoming election. After the November election, I saw very little evidence of such documentation. My election monitoring activities transpired over 3 days, where I was present for a total of 20 hours on November 14th, 16th, 17th in Gwinnett County. Because of my 35-year involvement in such data analyses, I was keenly focused on the data collection process during the purported risk limiting audit. A very detail of my experiences in Gwinnett is contained in my affidavit. It contains specific observations and conversations with election officials and hired consultant who is most familiar with the Arlo system, which is the risk limiting audit software. What follows are key facts that I observed and discovered during and subsequent to the purported risk limiting audit. The Arlo software was used to tally 5 million votes in Georgia. Supposedly, it was used in each of the 159 counties. Prior to the November 3rd election, the Arlo software had never been used in Georgia before. We had no experience with it. The Arlo system is purported to be an independent auditing system that was used to compare manual vote counts to the Dominion system count in Georgia. The Arlo system is owned by Voting Works, a nonprofit company of approximately 10 employees based in California that is primarily funded and sanctioned by DHS and CISA. Former director of CISA, Chris Krebs, described the Arlo software in a November 2019 article 1 year before the election. At a time when we no foreign actors are attempting to interfere and cast doubt on our democratic process. It's incredibly important elections are secure, resilient, and transparent. For years, we have promoted the value of auditability in election security. It was a natural extension to support this Arlo open source auditing tool for use by election officials and vendors alike. Voting Works founder Ben Adida stated in the same article, CISA helped fund the engineering development of Arlo to ensure it was free and open source. Free meaning no cost, open source meaning easily accessible by a coder to see how the code works. In addition to the software, CISA's organization will be offering states, this was a year ago, low-cost hosting and support options, as well as training on how to customize the software for their specific election process. It would be nice to know how much Georgia taxpayer dollars were spent on this free system and its consultants. In addition to Georgia, the Arlo software has been deployed in other states. Pending audits are being considered or had been considered for Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Missouri, Virginia, California, Colorado, Rhode Island, and Ohio. I should note that all the states that will use Arlo may not use it the way Georgia used it. Georgia used it to do a 100% audit of 5 million votes. The most standard way to use Arlo is to take a random sampling and test to see if the votes show that the statistically relevant number of ballots did or did not deviate from the final margin. So they're just looking at margins as they test the random ballots. I have in my written statement, I have links to the sources for these states that are considering using Arlo or did use Arlo. The Arlo software is an internet cloud-based web application. There is no need for local servers. The tallying computers contain the Arlo client software, which is a small piece of software that is phoning home to the mothership. And it's connected to the internet via local wireless network. Each tallying table in Gwinnett County contained one laptop and 2 election workers who would enter data into the Arlo application. From what I could see from 6 feet away, that there were 2 people sitting side by side, entering data and verifying the data from batch tally sheets. They entered into the database form the batch ID, the vote count for Trump, count for Biden and Jorgensen, and then the total. Individual batch tally sheets had contained handwritten ballot totals recorded onto a standard paper form earlier by election workers who were actually counting the physical ballots, a stack at a time, an average of 100 ballots per sheet. Sheets were signed by election workers who had previously counted them at separate tables. At peak times, there are approximately 50 laptops on the counting floor. At least one Post-it note was seen on an election workers table containing the wireless password for the 50 computers to connect to a local network used to transfer Arlo data via internet to the Secretary of State's office. I asked a visiting consultant at the Gwinnett site, who was very familiar with Arlo and was obviously responsible for the training of the workers there, about the location of a local Arlo server and if local backup tallies were being kept. She responded that there were no central collection server computer or local tallying application located in Gwinnett County or any other county in the state as far as she was aware.
So wait a minute, let me stop you right there. Are you saying that there was that information that was put into the Arlo system was not kept locally?
That's correct.
And it was sent to the cloud?
5 million of them.
Okay, thank you.
As far as she was aware, no such counts of independent data or their existence were being kept. For each county to obtain final Arlo results, the state would notify them of their total. This is referred to as a top-down auditing process, and it's not a preferred method of formalized validation. which deploys a bottom-up approach. The numbers from the bottom challenge the numbers at the top, not the numbers at the top tell the bottom what they counted. That's just backwards. I provided detailed information in my affidavit of the Arlo system regarding the open source aspects of it that, while transparent, also make it vulnerable, especially since the code that is used to execute can be seen and analyzed by outside sources. Furthermore, a cloud-based web app can easily be intercepted by those in the know, especially anyone who contains a network password. Lastly, my affidavit shows actual code available in the public domain and linked to by the VotingWorks webpage. There is at least one code example that has been on the reference site for over 8 months that can be used to hack Arlo applications. The code example includes detailed coder's notes that describes how to detect a hack attempt, but more alarmingly, how to actually grant administrative access to any user who turns that access on and off by simply setting a programming variable. Many of you are aware that the Arlo audit that was deployed at the request of the governor's office was used to collect and tally presidential vote information from approximately 5 million, or 100% of the ballots cast in 159 counties in Georgia. I have repeatedly referred to the Arlo tally as a purported audit because I personally do not believe that a bona fide audit was actually performed. A true audit would have collected additional validation data in the form of independent backup data from the 159 counties. If such an independent check of all the collected data was actually performed and has not been reported by the Secretary of State's office to the public as far as I'm aware. And I've looked all over his site for all of the files, and I've analyzed a lot of data sheets, and I've not seen any independent count of Arlo data or challenging of the Arlo data by an independent source of data. Hopefully, this backup data still exists in the form of the paper ballots that were being entered electronically. There's a piece of paper out there. There's in the state of in Gwinnett County, there's probably 4,000 of those sheets of paper, and across the state, there's probably 50,000 of those sheets, so if everybody followed the same procedure. According to Georgia's local government records retention schedules, LG 07056, on recount records, all records related to recounting or recanvassing of the votes cast in an election shall be retained for 2 years. So Georgians and their elected and appointed officials have 23 months, if so compelled, to perform a more formalized actual validation of the presidential race vote count, using batch sheet records that must be maintained in each county as required by law. I contend that such an audit can be conducted in a far less intensive data validation process compared to counting every vote again. For your committee's considerations, I have provided a suggested procedure appended to the end of my written statement describing a simple validation process for the Arlo data. Finally, these questions should be asked and answered regarding the Arlo central database and server application. Is there a record of who actually performed the final tally at the Secretary of State's office using the central server's cloud application? Were any of these central server administrators connected to Dominion as employees or consultants? Were there any electronic connections to Dominion systems or Dominion data in any way during the Arlo audit counts? Were the Arlo server administrators comprised of properly trained elections officials who were employees of the state of Georgia or appointees? Were any Arlo server administrators outside consultants whose names and credentials can be shared with the public? What was the process of collecting the Arlo data at the Secretary of State level? Was that process witnessed by Democratic and Republican monitors? Senators, after the most recent November 3rd election, scarce few of the aforementioned validation type records or documents have been shared with the public, and they may not even exist at all. The web-based, potentially vulnerable, centrally tallied, and possibly compromised Arlo system was used and might be used again in January to provide an unvalidated audit of the Dominion vote count. I implore you to ask the Secretary of State to provide proof that there were no attempts to hack or manipulate the Arlo vote totals in each county or at the state's server. Suggested examples of electronic file and software validation methods are also described and have been included at the end of my written statement. If such measures have already been performed, these records should be shared with the public. In conclusion, I and many other Georgia voters are concerned about the lack of transparency regarding the Arlo audit. This concern can easily be alleviated by auditing the audit using proven validation methods for software systems. Finally, as a citizen of the United States and a resident of the state of Georgia and a property-owning taxpayer in the county of Gwinnett, I and other voting Americans applaud your efforts to uncover and address the anomalies associated with the November 3rd election. We are also watching with vested interest to see if any of your findings or recommendations will actually be implemented in the collection of, reporting of, auditing of, and finally, validation of and certification of the upcoming January Senate race. The eyes of the nation and the world are focused on Georgia's ability to conduct a fair and transparent election. Thank you again for your diligent efforts to take what was and is still being learned and to the extent possible applying those lessons learned to restore the public's trust in accurate results of the Senate runoff next week. These same sentiments apply for future elections in the great state of Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran.
Thank you.